The American RV market isn't slowing down, it's collapsing. A $2.3 trillion industry is cracking, dealers are panicking, and millions of Americans are no longer buying RVs for travel. They're living in them because housing is failing. This isn't about camping. This is about an economy under stress. The modern RV collapse didn't happen overnight. It was built slowly, quietly, and dangerously. Over the past decade, the RV industry expanded into a multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem when you include manufacturers, dealers, lenders, campgrounds, insurance, fuel, repairs, and tourism. During the pandemic years, this system ballooned far beyond real demand. Between 2020 and 2022, RV shipments surged to historic highs as Americans rushed to buy mobile shelter, freedom, and isolation all at once. What most buyers didn't realize was that this demand wasn't organic growth. It was future demand pulled forward. Millions of households who might have bought an RV someday bought one immediately. That left a massive hole behind them. When stimulus checks ended and normal life returned, there were far fewer new buyers left to sustain production levels. At the same time, manufacturers expanded factories, hired aggressively, and locked in supply contracts based on pandemic-era numbers. Dealers borrowed heavily through floor plan loans to stock massive inventories. This created a fragile chain reaction. Once sales slowed, debt remained. Payments didn't stop. Interest kept accruing. Storage costs kept climbing. By late 2023 and into 2024, shipment volumes collapsed while unsold inventory exploded. This is how bubbles pop, not with a bang, but with silence. RVs stopped moving. Payments didn't. The market didn't shrink because people stopped liking RVs. It collapsed because the industry mistook a crisis-driven spike for permanent demand, inflating a system that could not survive reality. What looked like a golden era was actually a slow-motion financial disaster building beneath the surface. The RV boom of 2020 to 2022 is often described as a golden age, but economically it was anything but. Lockdowns, travel bans, hotel fear, and remote work pushed Americans toward RVs as rolling safe zones. Families weren't buying RVs because they loved camping. They were buying escape pods during a period of deep national uncertainty. Government stimulus accelerated this behavior. Many buyers used relief checks and emergency savings to justify purchases they could not afford long-term. RV loans stretched to 15 to 20 years, disguising true cost behind seemingly affordable monthly payments. During this period, dealers reported record sales not because RVs became better, but because fear overrode financial logic. Once the emergency passed, behavior reversed sharply. Travel normalized. Offices reopened, fuel prices climbed, campgrounds filled. The emotional reason for owning an RV disappeared, but the debt didn't. Many owners discovered they used their RV only once or twice a year, far less than originally expected. The result was a flood of lightly used RVs hitting the resale market. At the same time, new inventory was still rolling out from manufacturers. This created severe supply overload, crushing prices and destroying trade-in values. Buyers who thought they purchased an appreciating asset discovered they owned a rapidly depreciating liability instead. The so-called golden age wasn't real growth, it was a panic distortion. When the fear vanished, so did demand. What remained was excess inventory, long-term debt, damaged credit, and a market struggling painfully to return to something resembling reality. One of the most damaging decisions driving the RV collapse was aggressive price inflation. Between 2020 and 2022, average RV prices rose 30 to 50%, far outpacing inflation, wage growth, or any measurable improvement in quality. Entry-level travel trailers that once sold for $20,000 to $25,000 jumped into the $35,000 to $45,000 range. Motorhomes crossed six figures as a baseline expectation. Manufacturers justified these increases by pointing to material shortages and labor costs, but price hikes didn't slow once supply stabilized. Instead, companies locked in higher margins, assuming buyers would simply accept permanently elevated prices. Dealers followed suit, stacking additional markups on top of already inflated manufacturer pricing. The fundamental problem is that RVs are not essential goods. They are discretionary purchases driven by desire, not necessity. When prices detach from perceived value, buyers hesitate. And once buyers hesitate, financing becomes the gatekeeper. A $9,000 RV financed at modern interest rates transforms into a long-term financial burden most households cannot honestly justify. Unlike housing, RVs do not appreciate over time. Unlike cars, they are not required for daily life. As soon as consumers recognized this critical mismatch between price and value, demand evaporated rapidly. Price resistance became widespread, quietly forcing dealers to discount while publicly pretending nothing had changed. The long-term damage runs deep. Buyers remember feeling price gouged. Trust eroded slowly but permanently. Even now, many consumers are waiting not simply for deals, but for prices to return to something that actually makes financial sense. Interest rates delivered the final blow to an already weakened market. During the boom years, RV loans were frequently written at 3 to 5%, effectively masking the true cost of ownership. Once rates climbed into the 8 to 11% range, monthly payments exploded, and the financial reality of owning an RV became impossible to ignore. Consider a concrete example. A $90,000 RV financed over 15 years at 4% costs roughly $665 per month. At 10%, that same payment jumps to over $960, adding more than $50,000 in total interest over the life of the loan. That single comparison alone removed millions of potential buyers from the market almost immediately. Higher rates also crushed trade-in values. RVers who bought at peak pricing found themselves deeply underwater, unable to sell without bringing significant cash to the closing table. This trapped people in RVs they no longer wanted or needed, while simultaneously preventing them from making new purchases. Dealers felt the impact immediately. Loan approvals dropped sharply, down payment requirements increased. Lenders tightened risk models across the board. Even financially qualified buyers began walking away after seeing the final loan numbers laid out in front of them. This isn't purely about affordability, it's about psychology. When consumers see long-term interest costs potentially exceeding the actual value of the asset they're purchasing, trust collapses completely. RV dreams turned into widely shared cautionary tales almost overnight. An entire generation of potential buyers learned an expensive lesson about debt, depreciation, and the true cost of leisure. By 2024, the RV industry faced a quiet but severe inventory crisis with no easy exit in sight. Dealer lots filled faster than units could be sold. Many dealerships carried hundreds of unsold RVs, each financed through floor plan loans that accrue interest every single month. Every unsold unit silently became a ticking financial liability on the balance sheet. Floor plan interest alone can cost dealers thousands of dollars per RV per year. Multiply that by massive inventories and profit margins disappear rapidly. This financial pressure forced desperate behavior across the industry. Silent price cuts, inflated discount stickers, extended warranties, and bundled incentives carefully designed to move units without publicly admitting the depth of trouble. At the same time, storage costs rose steadily. Insurance premiums increased. Weather damage risk grew with every passing season. Dealers who expanded aggressively during the boom years found themselves locked into overhead structures they could no longer financially support. Smaller dealers folded first. Larger operations quietly downsized staff and inventory. The most alarming signal wasn't dramatic closures, it was silence. Fewer advertisements appearing. Fewer promotions running, less transparency about real pricing and market conditions. In collapsing markets, confidence doesn't vanish loudly. It drains away slowly and quietly until one day, nothing remains. This inventory glut signals something far deeper than a temporary slowdown. Demand hasn't just slowed, it reset lower, until supply finally aligns with the new reality of the market. The RV industry remains fundamentally unstable regardless of how optimistic the official industry messaging continues to sound. One of the biggest myths fueling RV purchases was the idea that RVs hold their value well. In reality, RVs depreciate faster than most vehicles, particularly mass-reduced models. Industry data consistently shows many RVs lose 20 to 30% of their value in the first year alone and 40 to 60% within 5 years. That decline accelerates sharply during market downturns. Unlike homes, RVs are not appreciating assets. They are consumer products built with lightweight materials exposed daily to weather, road vibration, and constant wear from the moment they leave the lot. Yet, during the boom years, buyers were actively encouraged to believe resale values would remain strong. That illusion collapsed decisively when the resale market flooded with lightly used units, all competing for shrinking buyer interest. By 2023 to 2024, RVers attempting to sell discovered their units were worth tens of thousands less than their remaining loan balances. This created a painful lock-in effect. People couldn't sell without writing a substantial check at closing. Others dumped RVs at steep losses simply to escape ongoing storage fees, insurance premiums, and mounting maintenance costs. The result was a genuine buyer revolt. Consumers now understand depreciation risk and are refusing to pay inflated prices. First-time buyers are delaying purchases indefinitely. Experienced RVers are waiting patiently for deeper discounts before committing. This behavioral shift is critical because it permanently alters demand patterns across the entire market. Depreciation itself didn't change. Buyer awareness did. And once buyers truly understand how fast RVs lose value, impulsive purchases simply disappear from the equation. Quality issues have quietly become one of the most destructive forces accelerating the RV collapse. During peak production years, manufacturers relentlessly prioritized volume over craftsmanship. Assembly lines moved faster than ever. Inspections shortened dramatically. Corners were cut at every stage to meet overwhelming demand with insufficient care. The result was entirely predictable. Widespread reports of leaks, delamination, electrical failures, plumbing defects, slide-out malfunctions, and serious structural issues, often appearing in brand new units within weeks of purchase. Many RVers experienced significant costly problems within the first 90 days of ownership. Warranty backlogs exploded across the industry. Service wait times stretched into months and sometimes over a full year. Dealers lacked qualified technicians. Manufacturers deflected responsibility whenever possible. Buyers felt completely abandoned after spending life-changing amounts of money on products that simply didn't work properly. Social media fundamentally changed the dynamic. Platforms like YouTube, Facebook groups, and online forums expose these failures in real time to massive audiences. Unlike previous decades, problems could no longer be hidden or quietly managed. Potential buyers now research extensively before making any purchase decision, and what they're consistently finding scares them away. Trust is the foundation of any high-ticket consumer market. Once credibility erodes at this scale, genuine recovery takes years of sustained effort. Even manufacturers producing genuinely solid units are being punished by the industry's overall damaged reputation. This isn't a short-term public relations problem, it's a structural trust collapse reaching every corner of the market, and without trust, discretionary spending dries up with remarkable speed. At the height of the pandemic boom, RV manufacturers made a catastrophic assumption. They believed demand at crisis levels was permanent. Production lines expanded aggressively across the country. New facilities opened. Output targets were set based on record-breaking years rather than historical averages or realistic long-term projections. This was a fatal miscalculation with consequences still unfolding today. When demand normalized, factories were still producing at massively inflated levels. Inventory piled up across the entire supply chain, from manufacturer storage yards to dealer lots already straining under excess stock. By the time production finally slowed, the damage was already deeply embedded. Overcapacity is particularly brutal in capital-intensive industries. Fixed costs remain crushing even when sales collapse. Equipment payments, labor contracts, and supplier obligations don't disappear simply because buyers do. As a direct result, manufacturers were forced into painful layoffs, extended shutdowns, and in some notable cases, outright bankruptcy filings. The worst consequence of overbuilding was its impact on pricing power. Excess supply forced widespread discounting, which reduced margins, which further weakened already stressed balance sheets. This destructive feedback loop is extremely difficult to escape once it begins moving. Even now, production levels remain significantly misaligned with actual real-world demand. Until manufacturing scales back meaningfully toward pre-boom norms, downward pressure will continue affecting every part of the industry. This isn't primarily a consumer behavior problem. It's a fundamental industrial planning failure of enormous proportions, one that will take years to fully correct. For years, RVs were heavily marketed as a cheaper, smarter alternative to traditional housing and expensive hotel travel. That promise has completely collapsed under the weight of rising costs. Ownership expenses skyrocketed across every single category. Simultaneously, campground fees that once averaged $25 to $35 per night now frequently exceed $60 to $100, particularly near major cities and popular destinations. Fuel costs doubled from pre-pandemic levels and remained stubbornly elevated. Insurance premiums increased substantially. Repairs became significantly more expensive as labor shortages pushed service rates higher. Storage fees climbed steadily as urban restrictions expanded and available space shrank. Even basic routine maintenance now strains household budgets in ways buyers never anticipated. When combined with much higher loan payments driven by rising interest rates, RV ownership no longer offers real financial savings. It creates consistent financial pressure and stress. Many RVers discovered they were spending more money per month than they would pay for an apartment without any of the stability, legal protections, or equity that comes with traditional housing. This fundamental reality shift is critically important for understanding demand collapse. When the affordability narrative breaks, consumer interest collapses alongside it. RVs are no longer broadly viewed as freedom machines offering financial flexibility. They're increasingly seen as risky, expensive, long-term commitments with limited upside. What was once marketed as the ultimate path to financial freedom and lifestyle flexibility has become a source of significant financial exposure and regret for many owners. Consumers are responding to this reality in the only logical way available to them by walking away entirely. Perhaps the most disturbing transformation in the RV market is the fundamental shift from recreational purchase to survival necessity. Rising rents, stagnant wages, and persistent housing shortages have pushed thousands of American families into RVs out of desperation, not desire. This is not the customer the industry built itself to serve. This forced migration does not represent healthy demand. It doesn't support new RV sales in any meaningful way. People living in RVs out of necessity rarely buy new units. They purchase used, cheap, or already heavily depreciated rigs from private sellers. Manufacturers gain virtually nothing financially from this growing trend. Worse, cities across the country are aggressively cracking down on RV living through parking bans, mandatory towing policies, accumulating fines, and zoning enforcement. This official hostility transforms RVs into deeply unstable housing, increasing serious risks for vulnerable populations while simultaneously shrinking the resale demand that healthy markets depend on. The industry built its entire future on leisure spending, aspirational marketing, and recreational dreaming. What it received instead was economic desperation, knocking at the door with nowhere else to go. That profound mismatch explains precisely why the market feels fundamentally broken. Because in important ways it truly is. RV living is no longer aspirational for millions of Americans. It has become a visible symptom of systemic housing failure, wage stagnation, and collapsing economic opportunity. Markets built on dreams and aspiration cannot survive when harsh economic reality takes permanent control of the narrative. The industry faces this painful truth, whether it acknowledges it publicly or not. The used RV market is where the broader collapse becomes impossible to hide or deny. During the boom years, lightly used RVs sold quickly and often commanded prices close to their original purchase cost. That comfortable illusion vanished with startling speed. By 2023 to 2025, for sale listings exploded across every platform, while genuine buyer demand dried up almost completely. Private sellers now compete directly against dealer overstock, repossessions, and large-scale rental fleet liquidations hitting the market simultaneously. This overwhelming supply imbalance crushed resale values across every category and price point. Many used RVs now sit listed for months without receiving a single serious offer, forcing sellers into repeated painful price reductions. In numerous cases, desperate sellers prices 20 to 40% below recent peak values and still cannot attract qualified buyers. This used market collapse directly damages new RV sales in a critical way. Trade-ins, once an absolutely essential component of the buying cycle, lost value so dramatically that the math stopped working. RVers who expected to carry equity into new purchases discovered large negative balances instead. Without viable trade-ins, countless potential deals simply never happen, making everything worse. Depreciation actively accelerates in declining markets. Buyers anticipate further price drops and choose to wait rather than commit. Sellers panic and cut prices further in response. This self-reinforcing downward spiral feeds itself with little external intervention capable of stopping it. Used RVs are no longer perceived as smart bargains. They're widely viewed as falling knives that only cut deeper until prices genuinely stabilize and massive inventory finally clears. The entire RV ecosystem remains effectively frozen. Lending conditions reveal the true underlying health of any market, and RV financing is tightening at an accelerating pace. During the boom years, lenders approved long-term RV loans with minimal scrutiny, generous terms, and optimistic assumptions about asset values. Today, approval rates are falling steadily. Required down payments are rising, and available loan terms are shrinking toward shorter durations. The reason is straightforward. Risk is increasing rapidly. Rising interest rates combined with falling resale values mean lenders now face substantially higher losses when borrowers default. Repossessed RVs frequently sell at auction for far less than the remaining loan balances, forcing lenders to absorb significant write-downs on their books. In direct response, lenders are aggressively adjusting their models. Credit score thresholds increased meaningfully. Debt-to-income ratio limits tightened considerably. Some lenders exited RV financing entirely rather than manage growing exposure. Others raised rates sharply to compensate for increased risk, further reducing affordability for already stretched buyers. This credit contraction removes buyers from the market, including many who genuinely want to purchase. Without accessible financing, discretionary markets like RVs collapse with surprising speed and limited warning. What makes the current situation particularly dangerous is the timing dynamic. Lending typically tightens before visible defaults actually spike in public data. That means significant financial stress is still building quietly beneath the surface right now. When defaults rise openly and obviously conditions will already be considerably worse than they currently appear. Credit doesn't tighten without compelling reason. Lenders are clearly reacting to warning signs they can see building, and experienced lenders are rarely early for no cause. Publicly, many RV dealers project optimism and business as usual confidence. Privately behind closed doors, the reality is starkly different. Inventory carrying costs are crushing operating margins at dealerships across the country. Floor plan interest accumulates relentlessly month after month. Every unsold RV sitting on the lot becomes a growing financial anchor, pulling the entire operation downward. To survive, dealers are offering aggressive concessions carefully disguised as exceptional customer deals. Extended warranties, prepaid maintenance packages, free accessory upgrades, and dramatically inflated original discount stickers all serve the same hidden purpose. Prices must fall significantly to move inventory, but admitting that publicly feels impossible. Some dealers are now liquidating older units at or even below their actual cost, simply to free up physical space and reduce mounting interest expense. Others are quietly shrinking their physical footprints, laying off experienced staff, or permanently closing satellite locations that once symbolized growth. Independent dealers without manufacturer financial support are being hit particularly hard with limited options available. This observable behavior signals genuine distress rather than healthy recovery. Healthy functioning markets don't require constant emotional incentives and creative deal structures to complete basic transactions. When sellers must work this hard to persuade buyers through manufactured urgency rather than genuine competitive value, confidence has already left the building entirely. The silence spreading across the industry is deeply telling. Fewer advertisements appearing in local media, fewer aggressive promotions running, noticeably less transparency about actual market conditions and real pricing. In collapsing markets, sellers stop bragging publicly. They conserve cash privately. Dealer desperation isn't a dramatic headline. It's a lagging indicator of deeper trouble. And once it appears openly, rapid recovery never follows. As affordability continues collapsing across the RV market, financial pressure on existing owners rises with it. RVers now face rising loan payments, higher insurance premiums, escalating maintenance costs, and increasing storage fees, often while actually using their RV significantly less than originally anticipated when they signed the purchase papers. When household budgets tighten under economic pressure, RVs are consistently among the very first non-essential assets cut. Defaults rise quietly at first, largely invisible in public data. Missed payments lead inevitably to repossessions. Repossessed units re-enter an already oversupplied market at further discounted prices, pushing overall values down even more aggressively. This dynamic creates a dangerous self-reinforcing feedback loop. Falling prices increase negative equity among current owners, which drives more defaults, which floods supply with additional inventory, which pushes prices down further. Still, this same destructive mechanism fueled the 2008 housing collapse, just playing out on a smaller, more concentrated scale. Repossession sales rarely recover full remaining loan balances. Losses spread systematically through lenders, insurers, and dealers throughout the chain. That financial stress tightens available credit further, directly accelerating the broader market downturn with each passing quarter. The real danger lies in scale and speed. Even relatively modest increases in default rates can severely destabilize niche markets like RVs. These are not essential assets that owners will sacrifice everything to keep. They're discretionary, heavily financed, and extraordinarily sensitive to economic stress of any kind. When truly forced selling begins in earnest, markets don't gradually stabilize through orderly adjustment.